He's a #1 Amazon bestseller. He's an NLP manipulator. He's a property course seller. He's a Lamborghini driving multi-millionaire property guru. Forget that same old boring I am me narcissistic podcast format, because nobody gives a fuck. This podcast is all about you. So I'm taking these few seconds to thank you for subscribing, to thank you for leaving your 5-star reviews, and thank you for sharing this show with all of your friends. My team and I will keep bringing you these episodes and answering all of your burning questions in my Facebook community group called Property Crash Course. If you can just keep telling all of your friends about this show. Hey podcasters, now this is the second part, the second part to the 2-part series that I did, where you can, it's to do with, saving your service accommodation business. It's SA survival secrets. Now this is the second part, so make sure you guys don't just dive into, start on part 2. Make sure you've watched part 1 or listened to part 1, which was 2 days or the episode before this episode. So to get the most out of this episode, you must listen to part 1 first. It was just released 1 episode before this. So make sure you go back, you listen to that episode, because it will make much more sense. It will really sink in instead of you starting halfway through. I hope that makes sense. The big question, my friends, is this. How did I buy over 200 high cash flowing properties since the millennium, using the best no money down strategies from planning gains, refurbs, off plan, guaranteed rent, lease options, student lets, service accommodation, HMOs, negative equity, and dozens more, to build a multi-million pound property portfolio and then lose everything, including my wife, my children, all of my money and my liberty, when I was sent to prison for a crime committed by a lifelong friend, and then start over in £175,000 of debt, and now in 2020 have to restructure my entire companies, and fast, using the most up-to-date high cash flowing strategies to pull my company, my partners, and my listeners through this economic crash. I'm Ryan Otto, and this top-rated business podcast will give you all the answers. Okay, so what I was saying is this little trick, this little tactic, one little thing that we've done, which has been huge. Now, we're not going to be, I don't know, some people may charge people hell of a lot of money to give them access to this advice. But this is what we're doing right now, and it's working. So I want to give it to you guys completely free, so you guys can obviously have the same results. It will help, stop money bleeding out of your service accommodation property. So one other thing that we've done on many of our properties that are suitable is we've actually changed the name. So some things we've got, for argument's sake, it's a 2-bed penthouse, okay? Now we've changed the name of the 2-bed penthouse to something else, which I'm going to give you in a second. We've also changed the name of something else we've got, which are 3-bed duplexes. And we normally name them very, very, carefully or skillfully. So if somebody's searching for something and it's got 2 bedrooms, or they need 2 bedrooms, we call it 2 bedrooms. If it's a duplex, we call it a duplex. If it's a penthouse, we call it a penthouse. If it's got sea views, we call it sea views. If it's right by the train station, we call it something central, something along those lines. So as soon as they see the name, then obviously, that's what they're looking for, and it sells the property to them as well. Now, instead of just calling it, I don't know, the Blue Lagoon, which means nothing, but it might mean something to the property or the building or somebody else who's named it, it's completely irrelevant when you're talking about service accommodation. So we've named all of ours before, many years ago, certain names which are highly converted, and they appear on page 1 of Booking.com. And obviously, you guys know Booking.com spent around $5 billion last year just to get traffic from Google onto page 1. So we want to be, of course, on page 1, where all of you guys should be on page 1 as well. Okay, thanks, Joe. So the 3-bed duplexes, the 2-bed penthouses, the 4-bed townhouses with parking, all of those things, we've changed the names to NHS workers, contractors apartment for key workers that sleeps 8, things like that. So we've changed the name quickly on booking.com. We can change it back later if you want to, but we've seen a massive influx in bookings, much more conversions, all of the stats inside booking.com. We don't use Airbnb anymore. We did up until about 2016, but we got around 33% more revenue, I'm talking about, just by moving the entire portfolio across to booking.com. So we got a partner card with them now for a very long time, since when was that 2016. So we've literally gone back in and changed the name. So another little tactic for you guys that are struggling, where there's money bleeding out of your service accommodation property or portfolio right now, is change the name as quick as you can to something suitable for who you're looking for. If you want NHS workers, if they're called isolation units, if you're looking for contractors, if you're looking for security guards, if you're looking for key workers, be creative with the name and change the name. So the second those guys see it, which is the only market really right now, you can change it back again. That works, that converts. Okay, we're getting lots of bookings along that line. The next thing I want to give you guys is the booking policy. So I'm talking about booking.com, but this translates to any other app or Airbnb or, HomeAway, whoever you're using. But the policy, if you can imagine right now, people can't book in advance for, say, 14 days to then for the booking to be non-refundable, So if you've got a booking policy like we have, which is 14 days non-refundable, they can cancel before, but they can't cancel within that window of 14 days. Some people don't know what they're doing in 3 days or 7 days, let alone 14 days, okay? So the non-refundable policy, has more or less disappeared, okay? We've looked at the stats. We're not getting any activity from that. So what we've done is changed our policies, and we've changed them all the way down to 2 days. So you might think that's crazy, but if you can imagine, people normally know what they're doing right now 2, 3, or 4 days before. Some might just be 1 day before or on the day, but you can't obviously with service accommodation where you've got 1 in the building, or you may have 10 in the building for argument's sake, but then you can't run it like a hotel where there's a check-in desk and everybody books and it's free cancellation and or it's free cancellation until something like 2 p.m. on the same day. That won't work. It works in a hotel when you've got 150 other rooms and lots more bookings, you can move people around. But when you've got 1, or just say 5 or even 10, then you want to have the security of a booking, not on the day everybody doesn't turn up, because obviously you guys know there's not enough time to find somebody else. In this climate I'm talking about. Peak summer, it's a bit different, but in this climate. So if you change the policy down to 2 days, there's even a setting on booking.com where it goes down to 1 day, okay? So it's maximum flexibility. Somebody can book, and then they can cancel up until 1 day before, right? Or 2 days. Ours is 2 days. We didn't do the 1, but it works. We've seen conversions literally go from here to here straight away by changing that policy. And something else that we've done that you guys might want to do as well is we've increased the price. We've increased our prices when they want the maximum flexibility. So let's think, if they book on some of our policies, or all of our policies actually thinking about it, on all of the properties, they're mirrored. Now, we've got, if they book something like non-refundable, it's about 17%. No, it's about 11% discount right now. If they book the standard policy, obviously they don't get the 11% discount. That's 14 days cancellation. If they book to cancel with the flexibility up to 2 days before, we've actually increased that price by 17%. So now there's a massive swing of 27%. Or 28%, from the non-refundable all the way up to 2 days before. And we've seen conversions literally go from here to here. And it's more money as well when they want the 2-day cancellation. Okay, so that's something else for you guys to do. We've also changed all of our minimum stays. We do 1-night stays because where we are, or where my portfolio is, it's all across the southeast. We've got Bexhill, like Hastings Way. We've got Eastbourne. We've got a massive portfolio in Brighton. Then we've got Portsmouth. Then we've got Southampton. Then we've got Poole and Sandbanks, Bournemouth, all the way here across the south coast, which are more holiday makers and companies. But it means it's all year round for us, okay, while we chose those particular areas. But the 1 night, sometimes on the 1 nights, we used to be getting, last summer I'm talking about, on a Saturday night, we could get anything up to £700 for a 2-bed apartment for 1 night. and we could get anything up to around about 2,100 for a 4-bed executive detached house for one night on a Saturday night. So we do have the one nights, but right now, during the coronavirus, everything that's happening right now, we've changed the policies to a minimum of 2 nights. Because again, contractors, NHS staff, key workers, they're staying for longer periods of time. They're at the hospitals, they're on building and construction sites, they're at the universities, giving like 10 or 24-hour around-the-clock security with a team of guys that rotates, okay? So they're here for longer. They're not here just for one night. So we're getting more bookings for longer periods of time. Like I said, 2 nights, 5 nights, 7 nights, even a month, 28 days at the same time for our buildings in Eastbourne, 2 of them together in the same block. So look at obviously taking or changing your policies as quick as you can to accommodate some of the guests in that particular way. Now, something else we've done in some of the properties which don't perform as well, because we know during the low season, January, February, March, they're not fantastic, but they break even with the cleaning costs and everything else. But when it gets to the summer, they can do anything from 6, 7, or even 8,000 in 1 month, okay? Now, some of those properties, we've looked across the portfolio and thought, what can we do with these? Are they in the right locations? Are they too far on the edge of the city? What's the parking like? What's the location like? How are they presented? And some of those, we've put mid-term tenants in. So the ones we know will perform near the hospitals, near the train stations, near the city centre, in the better places where, everything's accessible, even though everything's closed, accessible in different ways, right now. We've actually kept those, and then we've turned some of the other ones, which we think might be a little bit difficult right now, just to weather the storm. We've turned them into mid-term lets. So we've taken tenants from 1 to 3 months. They're paying a different rate, okay? 1 to 3 months. But what we've done with those guys is where we take them from 1 to 3 months, we give them something which is called guaranteed acceptance. So lots of landlords, lots of investors, lots of homeowners will be thinking right now, oh my God, if I rent the property to a tenant, they can pass all the credit checks in the world. They pay the first month's rent, they pay a deposit, and then they just take advantage of the scheme that Boris has brought in, which means that now they're protected from eviction for another 3 months. So on average, it takes 5 months to evict someone, plus this 3-month window. That could mean they look great on day one, they move in and not pay the rent for 8, 9, or even 10 months. So there's no rent coming in, which would push most landlords over the edge, maybe possibly into repossession or maybe even into bankruptcy. You don't know, especially right now. So landlords are even nervous to even rent their properties right now because it's not worth the paper it's written on for someone to be credit checked and referenced, because they can lose their job. They might already be on their way out. There's so many more things to think about. So what we've done for a very, very long time, because we've got another portfolio of student properties. I've got a very large portfolio of student properties near the universities. Now, because of that, we do things differently, okay? Instead of the student having to jump through all the red tape or pay the full 10 or 12 months in advance and then jump through all the red tape with the agency where it's very difficult and they need to provide all this information and then they've got to do all the guarantor things, or if they don't pass this, it's very, very hard. We make it very easy for students. They can move in on the same day they come and view our properties, okay? We've been doing it for a very long time. Now, because of that, we use different types of agreement. We use licenses, we use room agreements, we use holiday let agreements up to certain periods where they're fixed. And what that means is it falls outside of the Housing Act. When the contract falls outside of the Housing Act, there is no eviction. There is no eviction. So when you issue a certain contract like that, which doesn't fall within the AST or the Housing Act, there's no evictions. It becomes a license, or it becomes like a hotel agreement or a holiday let agreement. There is some things that you need to look at in a bit more depth to make sure you're using the right one and you're issuing it for the right amount of time. But when you understand that, you don't need to worry at all right now about renting a property to somebody who may not pay the rent after 1 month, and then you have to evict them. So this is a holiday rental agreement or a license, whatever contract falls outside of the Housing Act, like a hotel. And we're issuing these to people for around 1 month to 12 weeks, okay? 1 month to 12 weeks. So all we're looking to do right now is some of the poor performing properties, or the ones that we know are too high risk for us right now to keep them filled and cover the costs and the expenses and cleaning and overheads and the Netflix and the Sky and everything else and the broadband. Instead of bleeding cash and, 30, 40, 50 grand every single month just to subsidize the portfolio because they're not performing, because there's no guests in them and they're all, set up for guests, booking.com, etc. We've just turned some into midterm lets. So we've taken tenants on from 1 month to 12 weeks. And what that gives us is around about a 20 to 25% premium anyway on top of the local market rent. Because let's say it's £1,000 a month, the property, right? If somebody would take an AST at the market rent of £1,000 a month, they'll take it for 6 months. They'd have to be credit checked and referenced and pass everything, and everything's all good, and all the IDs and everything else, and the landlord reference, and then they're in. It might take a week, okay? What we've been doing for a very long time, is anybody who comes to a viewing to see any of our properties, they're ready to go and move in the same day if they like it. So if they like it, everything is done so they can move in on the same day. It takes an hour from the viewing for us to do the contract, send it to them for the e-sign to receive the money and everything else. Everyone countersigns it and they move in. It's that simple. So when we do that, people are happy to pay a premium for a shorter period. The same as why all of us here right now are involved in Booking.com and Airbnb and short letting and things like that, because you're taking a property from one market, £1,000 a month rent, and you're putting it into another market, Booking.com, Airbnb, HomeAway, etc. And now that 1,000 is now worth 3,000 from basic arbitrage. So you guys know how all of that works. If you're a landlord, investor, service accommodation provider, rent to rent, whatever you want to call it these days, that's just simple arbitrage. So there's tenants out there that will pay 20, 25, even a 30% premium to rent the same property that would be 1,000, pay up to 1,300, just to have the flexibility to rent it 1 month at a time. And that's all we're looking for right now, where we can get people in with a low deposit, guaranteed acceptance. They can move in the same day they view, okay? That's another strategy for you guys. Now, this is a service accommodation survival secrets I'm sharing with you guys now. For some of you guys that have just joined, some of you guys on Instagram over here. And just post your questions, guys. Ashneet, and Joe, and just keep the questions coming. I'll make sure I answer those at the end for you guys, and on the other platforms that you guys are answering questions on as well. I try to go through as many as I can here. If not, I'll do another episode answering all of your questions. Okay, guys? So, LHA. This is another strategy, LHA, local housing allowance. Now, around about, when would it have been? When was we into LHA? See, I'm not new to this, guys. You don't hear a lot about me, or you haven't maybe until about, 12 months ago from this podcast and other things that we're doing. But I've been investing in real estate or property since the millennium, the year 2000. I know lots of the veterans that have been here in the game that had the biggest training companies, doing the most amount of deals, and they've left because they've gone on to bigger, better things, or just changed, their approach. I'm talking about Palm Deep, Vadesha, from a long time ago. Some of those guys, which lots of you guys may not even know about. And I remember Palm Deep's course, actually. I think I was on a podcast that he had about 2007. Yeah, he had a podcast around 2007. And I was actually on his podcast, and I think it was done over the phone back then, if I remember. We was talking about deals that we was doing, and my company was, buying lots of deals. We were selling and packaging lots of deals to our investors, but we were buying the whole site ourselves, my company, from about 2003 up until about 2008 when the crash came. We was buying like entire sites of developments all over the UK, mainly London, the southeast, the south coast. We went north a few times, but we tried to stay away from the north back then for different reasons. And he invited me onto one of his podcast things. It was like a teleconference back then, but it was recorded and distributed over the internet. And we're talking about negative equity deals, because that's another strategy that we used to do with service accommodation just before up to the crash. And then as soon as the crash 2008, we got into negative equity deals and just whatever strategies work at the time. So no, from one of you guys that just asked that question. We've been doing this for 20 years in all of the cycles as the market's rising, like off plan, buy something today, tomorrow it's worth more. As the market plateaued in 2007, and then as it crashed 2008, 9, 10, 11, we just used completely different strategies. So coming through another recession, which the economists are saying is on the cards right now, and there's just different tactics for different times. So it really is as simple as that. Okay, so LHA, something that we explored around about 2004, 2005, probably up until about 2008, which was the local housing allowance. So some of you guys may be in certain areas where the council will give you a guaranteed rent or a guaranteed rental scheme on some of your properties that you've got. Okay, guys, and they used to pay a hell of a lot of money because they used to pay based on how many rooms the property had. But what used to happen is some people took advantage of that, turned dining rooms into the fourth or fifth bedroom for argument's sake, and then asked the tenant, what's your allowance? So if the rent was, I don't know, £1,000 a month, local market rent, but their allowance was $1,550. We used to do this in Enfield, okay, a long time ago, 2004 to about 2008. About 2007, I think it changed actually. And we used to ask them, what is your allowance? And they would say, my allowance, based on how many children I have, etc., is $1,550. So the property we was renting or we owned, etc., the local market rent was $1,000, or we may be paying a landlord $800 back then, about 20% lower. We was offering guaranteed rent from about 2004. And so what that means is instead of us collecting £1,000 a month and paying $800 to the landlord, or $800 on a mortgage and collecting $1,200 net profit, we was maxing the allowance out to $1,550 and collecting hell of a lot more. Okay, now that went away because they changed the regulations and the allowances, but right now, that some of you guys may not even know, it's back again, because as you can imagine, there's different councils, different boroughs, different parts of the UK where they're now desperate, the councils, to house people. They're even housing people where I am right now, homeless people in hotels. The council is renting hotels and they're putting homeless people in the hotels. I know it needs to happen because of the coronavirus and everything else, but lots of things of their policies have just been completely relaxed to enable everyone to have somewhere to live right now. Even homeless people, taking them off the streets and putting them in entire hotels, renting entire hotels and putting homeless people in. So if you can imagine, it's something else for you guys to explore. If you can't find a tenant or your numbers, or you've taken on a deal which is a lot more than you should have paid for it, I don't know, because you're, making $3,000 or charging $3,000 a month and the local market rent is $1,000, but you've paid $1,500 and now you're trying to rent it and you're struggling to get $1,200, so you're at a net or loss, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. These are other options for you to explore. So local housing allowance, check with your council, guys, okay? And obviously something else we're doing is cancellations. If anybody is cancelling or wants to cancel, we're doing deals with them to give them a partial refund instead of having to give them a full refund. So it's very uncertain times right now, we understand that. Some people, depending on how they booked, will qualify for a free cancellation. Some people, force majeure circumstances, and then other people may request a cancellation, but then we're doing deals with them to say we're going to credit 50% or 70% or 25% of the cost of the stay to another stay with us for, they can use it for up to 12 months or even to the end of 2020. And then some of them we're saying, look, we'll give you a partial refund right now, even though you're in the window where you can't cancel with us, and we're offering them something like 10, even to 50% of a partial refund. Now, what that's doing is helping us to keep the cash flow coming in at the same time that it doesn't fall into the category of the force majeure circumstances, because when it falls into that category, then they get a 100% refund. So what we're trying to do is do deals with people before they will cancel, calling them, finding out if they can still come, is there any restrictions on their travel, do they need to move the dates, etc., and just doing deals with those people. Okay, guys? If you're an entrepreneur looking for the easiest and fastest way to replace your salary in 2020, using the latest property investment strategies that are built for the now, which enable you to replace the average salary. I'm talking about around £28,000 a year. That's without buying a single property. So that you can get your time back to spend those important moments with your spouse, with your family, with your children, and start earning what you're worth. Now, I created a 90-minute free training program that you can all watch right now. It's 100% free. Now, it walks you through a property investment strategy that enables you to pay the landlord £1,000 in rent per calendar month and collect around £3,000 in rent per calendar month. Now, this means you get to ethically keep that uplift, which is around £2,000 every single month per property. Now, if that's something that your family would benefit from, you should head over to www.perfectpropertydeal.com. That's perfectpropertydeal.com, and watch my free training while it's still up. And what else are we doing? Offering discounts to NHS staff, offering discounts. So instead of them paying whatever the allowance is, £100 a night in certain cities and up to £150 a night for, certain apartments, if you go onto the portals, we're just doing deals direct with them. Instead of it costing them that much, we're saying if you take it for 7 nights, take it for 1 month, we can do you a much better deal, and you can just rotate all of the people and put whoever you want in there on your team back at the hospital, whether they're key workers or NHS staff, so they've got the apartment at a much better rate, or the house, and they can rotate the staff themselves. So I can see lots of questions coming in for you guys. This is a bit of a different episode. This is going to be on the podcast. It's going to go onto the YouTube channel, etc. So this is slightly different. We're doing this one live and taking questions live, etc. And just trying to give you guys as much value as possible. So let's go deeper into the service accommodation survival secrets, okay? Because the timing, you're probably thinking, well, when does this work? And I mean, it's right now. It's right now we're in this pandemic. It's right now where your cash flow is in trouble. It's right now where, money is bleeding out of your bank account. It's right now where you need these tactics, these strategies, these breakthroughs, because if you do nothing, you cannot get the money back if you do nothing. So if it's costing you money every month, it's not even breaking even, you're struggling. I see it all over the internet. I read all the comments all over the internet and other people's posts where lots of people that have gone on some, discovery course or discovery day or taster day for service accommodation, rent to rent, whatever they're calling it now. And they've gone into this guns blazing, spent £4,000 on a furniture pack, and, they've done it up to how they want it. And it's cost them a lot more, and they put too much money in, they've overcommitted themselves, and now they're struggling, thinking, it's not even breaking even, it's costing me £500 a month, what am I going to do? And I've seen all the comments online where people are saying they're just going to give it back to the landlord, or go back to the landlord as if they're a tenant now, not a company, and say, we can't afford the rent, can we get a rent reduction like a tenant? But all of these things are very complicated because it depends on the type of contract that you're on, whether you've entered into the deal as a tenant or you've entered into the deal as a company. Because one is within the Housing Act, you are protected from eviction. The other, if you're a company or a service accommodation provider and you've gone down that route, then you don't get protection from eviction. So you can't get this payment holiday like I've been seeing all over the internet, people asking for. It doesn't actually apply to you if you're a company because you're not protected from eviction. And again, it puts you in a very, very difficult position. You've offered guaranteed rent to somebody to run it as a service accommodation unit. You're not sharing the profits with them. As soon as there's hard times like now, these guys, the new guys, don't know what to do. They're like, well, I can't afford it, so I'm just going to go back and ask for a rent reduction, or, get them to use their mortgage relief or their, mortgage payment holiday, and then just ask them to share that with me. But the landlords, if I was a landlord, I'm not sure how I would feel about that, because I've gone to you as a guaranteed rent provider, as a company. You need to come back with something better than that, instead of saying, now times are tough, I want to give you the property back, or I want you to reduce the rent. Okay, so these are tactics for you guys where you can try to avoid having that difficult conversation. Some of you may have to, but this will help. If you do some of these things that I'm sharing right now, it will help you guys where you can actually get back to breaking even quickly if you act fast, and you can actually be profitable right now, even though what's happening in the market, as long as you focus on key workers, NHS staff, contractors, security guards. As long as you focus on that, there will be some more. That's not all of them, but it's those guys that are still traveling. And as you can imagine, many hotels, if not every hotel in your city where you are, is closed. So if you can tap into that market by doing some of these tactics, some of these tips, some of these hacks or quick wins and strategies that I've shared with you guys, then you can not only just break even, but you can actually make money, and you can thrive right now, even during this pandemic. Okay, guys? Right, let's look at some of the negative consequences if you don't do some of the things that I've shared with you today, okay? Because I completely understand that many of you guys, if you're new to this, or maybe even if you're not new to it, if you haven't been through a recession, okay? So let's say you started after 2008, your journey in property. So let's say you haven't been through a recession. There's lots of things that you won't know because you've never been in that position, but there's opportunities around every single day, okay? So instead of just panicking, I understand it's a very stressful time at the moment, and if you've overstretched yourself, you can be paralyzed with fear, just procrastination, just not knowing what to do, not knowing where to turn, all the doom and gloom, and just panicking every single day. I completely understand that. I've been there myself. Let me ask you a question. Are you and your family prepared for when the economy crashes and your bank balance goes to zero? In the aftermath of the 2008 property crash, I held a keynote talk in Piccadilly around property investment tactics that work when the economy crashes. And these tactics saved me in the 2008 crash. Let me share them with you real quickly. The first one is buying properties for £1 without getting a mortgage, without putting a deposit down, and without any credit whatsoever. The next strategy is finding properties with £25,000 to £50,000 of instant equity. The next strategy is buying a property today and paying for the property later when it's worth more, a lot more in the future. The next strategy is renting HMOs and student properties and any properties up to 75% below the market rent. This gives you massive cash flow right now. And then the next strategy is raising from £4,000 to £14,000 from properties that you just rent. This can be used as get started cash for whatever you want in your business. Now, I created a free training to walk you through the only strategies that will save your bank balance from going to zero. I'm serious. If you just go to www.propertycrashcourse.com and tell me where to send this free training. So, I'm just trying to say to you guys that there is opportunities around. Let me give you an example. I took on a building in Brighton, as it happens, and it was a hotel converted, a whole hotel, which they decided to get out, and they converted the hotel into a few flats, so it was a whole block. Now, my company took on the top 3 floors of that hotel, and I wanted the rest of the deal. So I wanted the whole building, which was a former hotel, all at the same time. But the developer wouldn't do it at the same time because he wanted to get the maximum amount of money he could get from the triplex, which is upstairs. It's 3 floors, and then a 2-bed, then another 2-bed, and then it's another 2-bed actually, down below. So he wanted to get the maximum amount of money at the time. I wanted the whole building to try and do a deal for the whole thing. It ended up I got the triplex from the start, and what I offered for one of the other apartments in the building, because the deal is I wanted all of them, excuse me, it was rejected. So let's look at the price it was back then to the price I just got it at a week ago. There's about a 40% difference. So the price that which was advertised before was about 40% more than what I got it at a week ago. Okay? Now that's just because the market has changed and now there's nobody for the property, and now it's a lot more risk for them. It's now come back in my favor where they're open negotiations again, and we've managed to do a deal. I've already got people in there straight away, and literally from a week ago. So we've already got it filled as another service accommodation unit. And right now we've got security guards in there. They've stayed for nearly the whole week. Okay. And that turned out that we got it at around about 40% lower than the price I was prepared to pay 2 months ago, just because of the pandemic. So we're looking at deals. We're looking at other investors. We're talking to other service accommodation providers that have kitted the whole place out, entered into the deal, got the contract, for argument's sake, and they don't know what to do. They can't fill it, and it's bleeding money. We're out shopping right now, looking for deals, helping somebody else get out, helping the landlord still get the rent that's agreed in the contract, and we're stepping into their shoes and taking over some of those deals. We're actually looking for more deals right now, knowing that this will be over. And if you're the last person or the last company or organization standing when all this is, finally over, however long that takes, you'll be in a fantastic position because there's other people, other companies which are doing nothing. They're giving all the properties back. They're doing nothing at all. But then when the lights go green in, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whenever that time may be, and then they just start their journey. It's like they just start walking from the lights when they go green, okay? Whenever this pandemic is over, or we can get back to work, But we're gearing up now to acquire more deals, to take on salespeople, to build relationships, to go all in on the podcast, to find more, to reach more people, to deal with more agents and work with more people right now. So the second the lights go green, we're in a Bugatti from the lights, 200, 230 mile an hour straight away, instead of the guy which is just walking off from the lights at 5-10 mile an hour, because he's done nothing in this period where this is what counts the most. Okay, instead of going backwards, we're going forwards right now. Okay, so if you go too far back, you may not ever recover. So if you go too far back and too far into the red, lose too much money right now from your service accommodation property or properties or portfolio, you may never actually get back into the black. You may never be profitable again. You may lose over these next, 3-4 months, and it may be the end of your property or the end of your business. So I'm trying to help you guys right now, so you understand right now is the time where you have to act. You have to follow some of the things that I've said and use what other people have said who have been through this before, veterans with experience, and then do the right things, and don't take too long. So to make sure that you can come out of this on the other side, you don't lose your business or lose your portfolio. That's what we don't want for anybody else. Okay. I'm trying to think what else are you guys. Is there any more negatives? It's just lots of opportunities around. So as long as you guys are looking for them and you're not too fearful and you just understand what's happening right now, there's lots of opportunities around every single day. And this is just temporary. This is just temporary. Right now, what's happening has to come to an end. It has to stop. So don't think this is how it will always be. This is just a temporary situation. It's terrible that people are dying. It's terrible that the wheels of the economy have fallen off. It's terrible that everybody's at home locked down. But this is a temporary situation. Okay, so if you're just sitting there reading the news and watching on the news all day, every day, you think that this is it and how life is now. It's a temporary situation. People still will need to travel, even right now. When it's over. Even right now, key workers, contractors, NHS, security guards, they need to travel. So they need accommodation. And people isolating and everything else, they need accommodation. So there is still a market. And there's lots and lots of hotels and landlords and service accommodation properties that are closed. So as long as you can position yourself right now and get through this temporary situation, things will get much better, okay? But what it means is that the amateurs will be gone. The amateur hour, which was the same as when the 2008 crash came. Everybody who watched the Sarah Beanies and the Homes Under the Hammer programs and all those auction things thought, just buy a property today, paint it, put new carpeting, etc. And then you'll sell it for 10, 20, 30% more, okay? Now, some people just thought buy a property today and tomorrow it's worth more, okay? Now, what happened in 2008, 9, 10 is all of those amateurs that didn't have any understanding of anything else apart from buy the property and then it will be worth more by capital appreciation alone. All of those guys are now gone. It cleared them all out of the market because they was just one-dimensional. All they knew was make money from property by using a strategy or tactic which was completely out of their control, which was just buy it and hope that the market keeps rising. Now, the market has risen since 1942 at about 7% a year, every single year on average. There's peaks, there's troughs, there's recessions, and then it rises, and then there's recessions and peaks and troughs. But on average, since 1942, it's risen at around 7% a year, okay? Now, what that means right now is all the amateurs in service accommodation and rent to rent and everything like that are leaving in their droves. They're gone or they're going or they're being put out of business. So if you can just weather the storm, use some of these tactics, some of these strategies that I'm sharing with you guys, and get through the next, 2 months, maybe even 4 months, depends on how long this lasts for, then you're in a fantastic position where most of the amateurs are completely gone, okay? Oh, the live is just paused. Okay. Oh, it's back. It's back. Okay. Now, there is deals around, guys. So if you can... Oh, what's happening there? Hold on a second. The live keeps... There we go. It's paused. I think it's an internet problem. There it goes, back. Sorry about that, guys. It's just intermittent. It's intermittent at the point. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine, Joe. No worries. Yeah, something happened live on Instagram. So there's lots of deals around for you guys to expand. And I mean, my goal here is just to give you as much information as possible so you can protect your income, stop money bleeding out of your account right now. But you do need to act fast. You need to find tenants fast. You need to have more flexibility from the things that I've shared with you right now on this podcast. Hopefully you take some, or this Instagram live or TikTok, wherever you're watching this. I hope you get some value from this episode and you implement some of those things. I mean, if you got any questions, you can just hit me up anywhere on social, on Twitter, on TikTok, anywhere you see it below this video, or even ask me a question on the Apple Podcast. You could just pop it in a review, anything you want. Wherever you see this, just ask away any questions so I can help any of you guys actually stop money bleeding out of your service accommodation property or out of your portfolio right now, and try and help you guys weather the storm and get through this. So I'm going to take some questions now, and let's have a little look, see if there's any more questions. I've answered quite a few questions while I was actually talking already. So some of you guys, let's have a look. Who else have we got? I've got a couple of questions which I think I haven't answered here. So I'm just going to answer some of those before I go. Ashneet, I really appreciate that. You've been listening to the podcast for the last 12 months and you love the content. I really appreciate that. And then Joe... How much would you need to get started? If you're talking about getting started with service accommodation or rent-to-rent service accommodation, typically it doesn't cost a lot of money. It would probably cost you somewhere in a region of, if you think about it, 1 month's rent to pay the landlord, another month's rent as the deposit that they put into a deposit scheme. And then if it's not furnished, if you can negotiate furniture, fantastic. If it's not furnished, it's probably going to cost you about 1 month's rent again to get it furnished, dressed, styled, and linen. That's by, maybe buying some used items with new items as well, so mixing it in. But if you imagine, it's about 3 months rent to get started. Now, as long as you get started at the right time, I'm talking usually, this is a different climate we're in right now, but usually from about March or April, as the season is starting, you can get the summer in to get all of your money back straight away and build some cash up in the bank account so you're good all the way through the winter. in the low season to weather the storm. So I would say if you budgeted around 3 months rent to get started, that's what you're going to need to get your first, rent-to-rent service accommodation deal up and running. If you're going to buy it, then obviously it's not 1 month's rent. It's not a deposit. It's just the cost of the mortgage deposit, okay, if you're going to buy it. But right now, there's lots of deals around. You can go and lease them from landlords, lease them from investors. You can find deals on Facebook now all day long where there's service accommodation providers or rent-to-rent SA guys where they're trying to get out. They've spent $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on all the furniture. You can do a deal with them and say, I'll take over the liability of the property, of the rent, of the contract that you're, due to be paying. And you get to keep all the furniture, something like that. So you can mitigate their losses, do a deal with them. They may have paid a deposit already. You can even pay the deposit back to them that they've paid to the landlord or the agent. You can pay it back monthly. So let's say the rent's £1,200 a month. You're getting all of the furniture, you're stepping into their shoes, and you may pay them, $1,350 a month, something like that, just to sweeten them up. But if you think about it, it's even less than what it would cost you to get started, because even if it's that empty for 3 months, then you're back to the position of what it would cost you anyway. So you can do lots of deals now. You can, step into other people's shoes, or you can go and rent something brand new. If you're just starting out, you could do a joint venture with the owner, with the landlord, so you don't have to pay the first month's rent as a deposit. And you don't have to pay the first month's rent. You could just say to them, for argument's sake, they have the property, they furnish the property, you do everything, list it, deal with all of the guests, deal with all the bookings, make sure it's booked, fill the pipeline, deal with the check-ins, check-outs, and cleaners, etc. And then anything above the local rent they used to get, let's say they got £1,000 a month, anything above that, you would share with them, 50-50, 60-40, 70-30. So you can actually get into this with no money at all, Joe. So it doesn't cost you anything at all if you're just creative with how you structure that particular deal. Okay, I hope that answers your question. And I think I answered most of these questions. Okay, hold on a second. There's something I missed here. So Ashneet163 says, also, if we need to advertise on Booking.com or Airbnb, what standard does the hospitality need to be up to, and how much do we typically need to spend on hospitality in the first month? Now, I think what you mean is the standard of the property, how it needs to be presented. If you think about somebody staying in a hotel, there's 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star. Now, all of our properties, we try to position them around 4-star because it just seems as if where the properties we've got and how we present them, which is all new and clean and clinical where we can. We've got some older style cottages, older style holiday lets, which are still clean and tidy, but they're cottages for argument's sake. So some people may want the clean and clinical, brand new, apartments, houses, square boxes, but other people may want the character and things like that. So on average, we would just say we present them around about 4-star hotel. You can look on Booking.com in the area that you want to invest in or the area you want to get your first deal in, and just see how your competitors or someone who's got reviews above 9, how they're presenting them to give you the best idea as quick as possible. So wherever you're thinking, Ashneet163, of going into this, whatever area or city or town, wherever it may be, just go onto Booking.com or Airbnb, do a postcode search for where you want to be, have a look at whoever's got something similar, a 1-bed, a 2-bed, a 3-bed, a 4-bed house. Look at their reviews. If they're above 9, that means they're doing something right. Have a look how they've got it presented. Really is that simple. Okay. If we're doing this for the first time, is it a good time to start now? Is it a good time to start now? Well, if you've got the money right now to weather the storm during the pandemic, it's a good time to start. Now, also what I mean by that is some deals that were offered to us at £1,600 a month on a rent-to-rent service accommodation are now being offered to us at £1,100 a month. So if you're asking me, is it a good time right now? Yes, because we're going to take that deal, or we took that deal, which is now £500 a month less. So we're taking advantage of what's happening right now. You need to be able to cover the rent, obviously, until this is over. 1 month, 2 months, could be 3 months, could be longer, who knows? So as long as you can do that, or you can work a bit harder to get it filled, even to break even, but we've taken something, the market rent is $1,600, and now we've got it at $1,100. So we've got a massive margin. So we're just going to put some tenants into that one, or you could just secure them now. So it is a good time to start. Get them at the lower rents right now. So it's a very good time to start. You can put some midterm tenants in 1 month to 3 months, like I explained earlier in this episode. And then as the market comes back, and then as travelers start traveling again, as bookings start getting booked again, and then you can open it up to the per night stay. Move that tenant out, and then rent it per night. Okay, so when we do that, every £1,000 of rent that we pay out is worth around £3,000 every single month that we collect. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And okay, brilliant. Well, lovely to have you guys on here. Slightly different what we did with the podcast today. Just recorded this one live with some TikTok lives, some Instagram lives at the same time, and tried to take some questions as well. Just something we're just testing, exploring, experimenting. So I hope you got some value from this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anybody else who's got any questions, just post them in the chat or send me a DM, whatever platform you're on, and I'll still answer those for you guys. All right? Thanks. He's a #1 Amazon bestseller. He's an NLP manipulator. He's a property course seller. He's a Lamborghini driving multi-millionaire property guru. Forget that same old boring I am me narcissistic podcast format, because nobody gives a fuck. This podcast is all about you. So I'm taking these few seconds to thank you for subscribing, to thank you for leaving your 5-star reviews, and thank you for sharing this show with all of your friends. My team and I will keep bringing you these episodes and answering all of your burning questions in my Facebook community group called Property Crash Course. If you can just keep telling all of your friends about this show.